If your shadow is long, someone is following.
I didn't know I was part of an experiment, at least not at first. If someone had asked me back then whether my relationship with Aaron felt real, I would have said yes without hesitation. Not in a dramatic, cinematic way, but in the quiet, ordinary sense that convinces you something is solid. Predictable texts, thoughtful pauses, arguments that ended neatly, apologies that came on time. Nothing felt chaotic. Nothing felt random. That should have been the first warning. We met at a bookstore cafe, the kind with soft lighting and overpriced coffee that makes people feel intellectual. He noticed the book I was holding and smiled like it was a coincidence. "I loved that one," he said. The ending stayed with me for weeks. It hadn't. But I didn't know that yet. I'm Mila. I work in user experience, research. Ironically, I study behavior, patterns, decision, make a living predicting how people will respond to systems they don't fully understand. I didn't realize I was being studied too. Aaron felt safe from the beginning. Not exciting, not intoxicating. Stable, safe. He asked questions that felt intentional, not invasive. He mirrored my pace perfectly. When I pulled back, he didn't chase. When I leaned in, he met me there. We moved forward like a well-calibrated machine. Dates happened at the right frequency. Intimacy escalated gradually. Emotional disclosures were timed, never too soon, never too late. When I talked about my childhood, he listened without trying to fix it. When I cried once, unexpectedly, he didn't panic or retreat. Later, I would understand that calm wasn't empathy. It was training. 6 months in, I noticed something strange. Every major emotional moment in our relationship followed a pattern. When I felt insecure, reassurance came within 12 hours. When I expressed doubt, clarity followed. When I pulled away, he gave me just enough space to miss him. It felt managed. I told myself I was that therapy had just made me hyper-aware of dynamics, that not every stable relationship had to be messy. Then came the questionnaire. It arrived casually, slipped into conversation like an afterthought. "My company is doing this internal study," Aaron said one night, stirring his drink. "They're testing how people articulate emotional experiences. It's anonymous. I thought you'd actually enjoy it. You're into that stuff." I smiled. "You know me too well." I clicked the link the next day. The questions were invasive, but elegantly phrased. How do you respond to emotional withdrawal? What makes you feel chosen? Which form of reassurance feels most authentic to you? How long does it take for you to forgive betrayal? I hesitated on that last one. Still, I answered honestly. I didn't know I was building my own cage. Over the following weeks, Aaron changed, but only slightly. Subtly. In ways I wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't been trained to notice everything. He reassured me using my exact language. He apologized in ways that mirrored my preferences. He even adjusted physical affection based on how I'd described comfort. One night, half joking, I said, "You sound like me." He laughed. "Guess I'm a good student." Something tightened in my chest. The breaking point came accidentally. I was at his apartment, looking for a charger, when his laptop lit up on the desk. A notification banner flashed across the screen before it went dark again. Session data subject, MC. Phase 3, complete subject. MC, my initials. I stood there longer than I should have, my pulse loud in my ears. I told myself it was coincidence, that I was being paranoid, that Mila wasn't a rare combination of letters. But I already knew. That night, after he fell asleep, I opened his laptop. It wasn't locked. They never think you'll look. What I found wasn't messages with another woman. It was worse. Charts. Response curves. Emotional compliance metrics. Notes labeled attachment trigger success rate. A folder titled live subjects. I was one of 6. I scrolled until my hands went cold. Subject responds positively to delayed reassurance. Affection withdrawal increases bonding. Intensity. Love language. Adaptation successful. My relationship wasn't a relationship. It was a controlled environment. I closed the laptop carefully and lay back down beside him, staring at the ceiling, my body humming with shock. Aaron wrapped an arm around me in his sleep. Perfect timing. That's when it hit me, not fear, not heartbreak, but something sharper. They hadn't just manipulated my emotions. They'd monetized them. And if I had been hired to fall in love, then I was going to finish the experiment on my terms. And I didn't confront Aaron. Not because I was afraid of him, but because fear would have been inefficient. Instead, I watched. The morning after I discovered the files, I acted exactly the same. I kissed him goodbye. I complained lightly about work. I laughed at the right moments. I mirrored the version of myself he expected to see. And he relaxed. That told me everything. Whatever this experiment was, it depended on one thing: my authenticity, my genuine reactions, my unscripted responses. The moment I broke character, the data would shift. So, I stayed in character. I went home and spent the entire night reading everything I'd copied from his laptop. It didn't skim. I studied it the way I study user flows and behavioral models, slowly, critically, with professional detachment. The company running the study was called Orion Behavioral Systems. The language they used was clinical, sanitized, almost elegant. They didn't say manipulation. They said emotional optimization. They didn't say deception. They said controlled relational exposure. The goal wasn't to hurt anyone. The goal was to measure attachment efficiency. They were testing how quickly and deeply someone could be made to fall in love under specific emotional conditions and which variables produced the strongest bond with the least resistance. Aaron wasn't my boyfriend. He was a facilitator, a trained emotional interface, and I was a data set. Each subject had a file. Each file had phases. Phase 1. Attraction calibration. Phase 2. Emotional dependency formation. Phase 3. Bond stabilization. Phase 4. Stress injection. Phase 5. Long-term compliance prediction. I was nearing the end of Phase 3. Stress injection was next. That realization settled in my body like a countdown. I read Aaron's facilitator notes. Last. They were professional. Subject displays high emotional intelligence, self-aware but trusting. Risk: subject may recognize pattern repetition. There was a note from his supervisor. Maintain warmth. Avoid suspicion. Proceed to Phase 4 once subject exhibits anticipatory attachment. Anticipatory attachment. I closed the file and sat in silence. They weren't just studying love, they were weaponizing it. The next time Aaron saw me, he was different barely. His concern had a sharper edge. His affection felt slightly delayed. Stress injection: he canceled a date at the last minute, then apologized just enough. He went quiet for half a day, then returned with reassurance carefully tuned to what I'd identified as my emotional triggers. I felt it working on my body even though my mind knew what was happening. That's the most terrifying part. Knowledge doesn't cancel conditioning. It only gives you the chance to counter it. So I started my own experiment. If they were measuring compliance, I would measure control. I adjusted my responses by tiny margins. Not enough to trigger alarms. Just enough to skew data. I delayed reactions. I responded with neutral language instead of emotional affirmation. I expressed contentment without dependence. Aaron noticed. Not consciously but behaviorally. His timing shifted, his strategies recalibrated. He asked different questions, tested new approaches. I documented everything. Then I did something they didn't anticipate. I reached out to another subject. One of the files listed a woman named Subject RK with a note that she had exited the study early due to emotional instability. Her real name was Renee Keller. It took me 3 days to find her. LinkedIn, old conference attendee lists, a public speaking panel she'd once participated in about modern relationships. I sent a message. That said only one sentence. I think we dated the same man. She replied within minutes. Yes. We met in a quiet cafe, far from either of our neighborhoods. Renee looked calm, put together, not unstable. That word had been a lie. They told me I was imagining things, she said. That I was projecting, that I needed help. I showed her the files. She didn't cry. She laughed once, short and sharp. Of course, she said. Of course, it was a system. She told me her version. The sudden emotional withdrawal, the perfectly timed reassurance, the way he always stayed just out of reach. They made me feel like I was failing a test I didn't know I was taking, she said. I nodded. Because you were. We compared notes. Different facilitators. Same scripts, same language, same outcome. That's when I understood the scale of it. This wasn't one man experimenting. This was an industry. Orion Behavioral Systems sold emotional compliance models to corporations' customer loyalty, brand attachment, leadership influence. Romantic relationships were just the testing ground. Love was their lab. And women like us were the variables. I asked Renee what she wanted to do. She smiled slowly. I want them to feel it. That's when the plan became clear. We weren't going to expose them immediately. We were going to finish the experiment. Aaron moved into phase for a week later. He created distance. Manufactured uncertainty. Let me wonder where I stood. Then he returned with validation, stronger than before. Classic trauma bond cycling. I let it work. I cried once convincingly. I told him I was scared of losing him. I watched relief flood his face as his training paid off. That moment, that exact moment was when I took control. Because now, I knew exactly how much leverage I had. I wasn't just a subject. I was proof that their system worked. And proof, when used correctly, is dangerous. By the time Phase 5 approached, Orion Behavioral Systems had no idea what was coming. They thought they were about to predict long-term compliance. They didn't realize they were about to measure collapse. I let Aaron think the stress was working. That was the key. Because Orion Behavioral Systems didn't monitor me directly, they monitored the facilitator. They monitored whether Aaron could guide the relationship through instability and still keep the bond intact. They wanted proof that their model created loyalty even under discomfort. So I gave them loyalty. I became soft and needier. More grateful when he returned after a cold day. I used the exact phrases I'd seen in my file. I don't want to lose this. You feel like home. I trust you. I watched Aaron's confidence grow with every line, like he was collecting gold. Then, quietly, I collected something else. Access. At the end of Phase 4, Aaron invited me to a small company gathering. He framed it as a casual dinner with coworkers. Something low-key, no pressure. I smiled and agreed. It wasn't casual, it was a live evaluation. The dinner took place in a private room of an upscale restaurant, all warm lighting and controlled atmosphere. There were 8 people at the table, half of them couples, all of them polished. They spoke like people used to being listened to. They asked me questions that sounded friendly until you heard the structure beneath them. How do you handle conflict in relationships? What makes you feel secure? How quickly do you forgive? When you feel doubt, do you seek reassurance or withdraw? I answered exactly as my file predicted. They nodded, took sips of wine, smiled at Aaron like he'd trained a dog successfully. One woman, late 30s, sharp eyes, perfect posture, watched me more closely than the others. When she introduced herself, I recognized the name from the documents. Dr. Celeste Ward, Supervisor, Orion Behavioral Systems. My stomach didn't drop. It didn't even flutter. It went still, because suddenly, the experiment had a face. After dinner, Celeste pulled Aaron aside to speak privately. I watched them through the glass partition of the hallway. He nodded eagerly, like a student receiving praise. Celeste's expression stayed calm, almost bored. Then she looked over and met my eyes. Not a glance. A direct look. A measuring look. Like she was curious whether I was aware. I smiled. Bright Galerios Lucol. Her mouth tightened slightly, like Sebastian sure what she'd just seen. Good. That night, when Aaron slept, I used his fingerprint on his phone. I didn't hesitate. I downloaded the Orion app he used for reporting hidden under a generic name and blank icon. I opened it and found exactly what I expected. Check-ins, phase ratings, short video logs recorded after our dates. There was a section labeled Live Session Upload. They were uploading data in real time. And I had access. I recorded my screen as I navigated the app. I captured every subject code, every facilitator name, every internal message. I found a menu titled Subject Incentives and felt my throat tighten. They were paying facilitators per milestone. First kiss. Exclusivity. I love you. Moving in. Discussing marriage. Love had a price list. I sent everything to a secure drive Marcus Lee had set up for me. I'd hired a lawyer too, quietly, the moment Renee and I realized the scale. Renee had done the same. We had separate counsel but one coordinated strategy. And our strategy wasn't T-Woo Stu. It was to break the system. Orion Behavioral Systems relied on one thing: invisibility. They could only monetize emotional manipulation if no one recognized it as manipulation. So we didn't go to social media. We went to regulators. We went to board members. We went to the kind of people who panic when their names appear next to words like unethical, deceptive practices, human subject research violations. Within a week, Marcus filed a formal complaint referencing illegal human subject experimentation without consent. He attached the recordings, the app interface, the payment structure, the facilitator logs. Renee's attorney filed the same, supported by her evidence. Then we sent something else. A quiet package to Orion's largest corporate clients. Not gossip. Documentation. A short, factual letter. Your company has engaged Orion Behavioral Systems, which has been conducting non-consensual relational influence trials. Attached is evidence of methodology and incentive structures. Orion's world shifted overnight. Aaron didn't know any of this yet. He thought we were approaching long-term compliance. He proposed moving in together. It was timed perfectly. Right when their model predicted a subject would crave certainty after stress injection. He sat across from me on my couch, hands clasped, face earnest. "I've been thinking," he said softly. "We should take the next step. You and me. For real. For real." I let my eyes shine like he wanted. I let my voice tremble. "I want that," I whispered. His relief was immediate. He reached for my hand. "I knew you were the one," he said, and I could almost hear the Orion app logging it as success. Then I asked, gently, like a curious girlfriend, "Can I see something on your phone?" He blinked. "What?" "That app," I said lightly. "The one you use for work, the one that tracks phases." The color drained from his face so fast it was almost impressive. For a second, he couldn't speak. Then he tried the oldest tactic in the world: confusion. "Mila, what are you talking about?" I smiled. "Don't do that," I said softly. "You're good at it." It worked. But I'm done being data. His eyes darted toward the door. "Ten bake to me." I pressed play on my laptop. I didn't play a romantic montage. I played his own logs. His voice, recorded after our dates, describing me like a product. Subject, say. Responded positively to withdrawal. Subject displays compliance increase after reassurance. Aaron lunged forward. "Turn it off." "I didn't move primera. That's what you told me without telling me." I said. That my feelings were measurable. That my love could be engineered. He swallowed hard. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand," I interrupted, still quiet. "I work in behavioral research. You targeted the wrong woman." His mask cracked. "It wasn't supposed to hurt you," he said, desperation bleeding through. "It was just data." I tilted my head. And I was just a subject. He didn't answer. Because the answer was yes. My phone buzzed, a message from Marcus. "They're raiding Orion's offices. Media is on standby." Perfect timing. I stood up slowly, smoothing my sleeve like I was finishing a meeting. "I'm leaving now," I said. "And you're going to sit there and think about what you did while your company collapses in real time?" Aaron looked at me like he'd never truly seen me before. "What did you do?" A whispered. I smiled Gulari Zulu. And cold. "I finished the experiment," I said. And I changed the outcome. I walked out and didn't look back. The following days were chaotic, not for me, but for them. Orion Behavioral Systems issued statements, denied wrongdoing, promised internal reviews. Their clients paused contracts. Their investors demanded answers. Whistleblowers came forward once they realized the wall had cracked. News outlets picked up the story. Secret company allegedly engineered romantic bonds for data. People reacted the way they always do when they realize love can be hacked. Horror mixed with fascination. Aaron's name wasn't public at first. Then, during a deposition, it became part of the record. He tried to settle. Offered money, offered apologies, offered the thing he thought everyone wanted. I declined. Because money wasn't the point. Control was, and for the first time in his career, Aaron had none. Renee and I met one last time months later. We sat in a bright cafe, sunlight on our hands, the city moving outside like normal life had returned. "How do you feel?" she asked. I considered it. I didn't feel victorious in the way movies show. No fireworks. No dramatic music. I felt untangled. They thought love was a system, I said. So I treated them like a system too. Renee smiled. And you broke it. Primera smiled back, cool, effortless, real. They hired me to fall in love, I said. So I let them believe I did. And then I made them pay for every variable they thought they controlled.